This has multiple parts to it. There are 5 altogether. You have 4 photos due in a PowerPoint at the end of the week. You may do a 5th for an advanced track assignment, which is extra credit. So I'm just going to go through and speak about this briefly, and then I'm going to show you demos on how to set this up, as well as edit the whole thing step by step in Photoshop 2024. So you're going to create a staple city, and you're going to see how to do it in a moment. But you're going to create 4 different types of pictures. You're going to do one staple city with colored lights that you're going to use in the classroom. You're going to do a manipulated color, so you're going to use just regular light and then manipulate the colors in Photoshop. You're going to make a sky using a program or an application inside of Photoshop called Generative Fill. And then you're also going to replace the sky manually with masks. If you do the advanced track, it's taking one of your final photos, one of the more interesting ones, and creating a reflection assignment. So before you set it up, and I will talk to you more about this in the video, but you need some sort of background. In this case, the picture was being used with tinfoil on the monitor at the desk in the classroom. We are going to have not only tinfoil, but also butcher paper supplied for you. This is the one outcome of this photo shoot. So this gives you the basics. On this one, the edges are already cropped off. The top of the buildings are cropped out. That's a preference if you crop out the top of the buildings or not. One thing that I would caution against, something with this much bokeh and shallow depth of field, it's a bit hard to put a background in if there's so much bokeh already. So here's my sample that I photographed. I used a green light and it was off to the side. And I used tinfoil in the background. Here is another version of Staple City. So this is just basic Staple City. Okay, talk about hierarchy, talk about depth, rows of staples. When you're shooting this close, it kind of looks like they're skyscrapers in a downtown area. But this one used manipulated color inside of Photoshop. So Photoshop actually manipulated the color through masks, hue and saturation adjustment layers, which I will show you later in this video. This one, a little less of the color manipulation. It's okay. So we have some red lights here. And this one has actually added a sky. It's not the most interesting sky in the world, but it does replace the sky. This one has lighting from the side. It got some really deep shadows. It's a nice example. The problem with this one is you're not going to be able to replace the sky on this, so I would not use it for the assignment, but I do want to show lots of samples. This one's a bit better. We have the colored lights on the staples. I don't know if it's actually the color light or manipulated in Photoshop, but here we have replaced the sky. This picture is a generative fill sky, which is using artificial intelligence to make the sky. Here's more generative fill skies. I actually did this one later in the video to show you exactly how it can be done. Here's a couple more examples of different staple cities. This one is by a famous visual artist, and he spent hours putting this together, and it's about, I think it's 20 by 30 feet at the end. The advanced track this week is reflections. Once you create your staple city, you're going to create a flipped, reflective, motion-looking, ripply landscape or waterscape below it. Now you can see this staple city, the person included some bolts and screws and things. You may do that if you want. If you want to bring those in, I cannot provide them. I don't have any at school, but that's a great idea. Now this is the one that later in the video I actually edit with you. So you'll see me actually build this entire thing, but I wanted to share it here as well. Here's more reflections. This one's done a little bit differently. I wanted to also show you some different unique angles that I came across when researching this project. This one's kind of interesting. You have some horizontal staples. That might be a nice idea. You have some that are angled, looking like the roof ledges. I really like this. This is so interesting. The one thing that I caution you when you're standing up your staples, make sure that you have a piece in the back. So these have back pieces to them, and that'll help them stand up as well. So to reiterate before I start showing you my examples and setup of Staple City, again, you're doing 4 or 5 total photos. The fifth one is an advanced track. It's totally optional. And then the first 4, colored light, manipulated color in Photoshop, generative fill, which later in the video I'll teach you, and then replacing the sky. In my case, I went and got a sky offline legally and used it. I'm making this video in fall of 2024, and the week that we're making it, I'm just not going to be here Friday. So if you're watching this later or for somebody other than my class, sorry, but I did want to include that information. So let's jump into it, and I'll show you exactly how to do the assignment by setting it up first. Okay, to demonstrate the Staples City and the actual putting it together, you need a flat surface, something entirely flat, a desktop, a tabletop, um, the area in front of your computer monitor is fine. And then you need some sort of vertical wall area. So you could use an actual wall. I don't have a wall that's really conducive to recording right here. So I just use the box. Here's my flat surface. I originally was using the table. It has a little bit of texture to it. Next, you either need tin foil. Okay, tin foil is great because it has a nice reflective surface and a little bit of texture to the background. Or butcher paper, poster board, things like that. Now, I have my tinfoil ready to go. I am supplying tinfoil as well as butcher paper for this for you guys. And so what we're going to do is, imagine this is your iMac monitor. And we use a little bit of painter's tape. Unless you're doing it at home, you're going to use different surface, different kind of tape. And then just kind of make sure that this surface where you're going to put the staples is relatively flat. You're going to see why. Okay. So now, next up is you need some staples. And so I've a box of staples here, long ones, short ones. I mean, you guys have grown up with staples in your life. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a cityscape that is all staples. So we call this the Staple City. And this part takes a little bit of time to accomplish. So I'm just going to speed this part up. So now, once you put that together, I just have a couple notes. In my demo here, I didn't drop any. I practiced this a couple times and I dropped them every single time. So be very careful. You know, have a steady hand and kind of bring it straight down. Um, your best bet here is to take 2 sets of staples, a tall one that's going to be your front, and then a smaller one that's going to be your back, and kind of put them together. So when you stand it up, they stand up well. So you don't want to drop any there. Okay. So once you have your Staple City built, your first step, because you're doing 4 different kinds of photographs for my assignment, which your first step would be regular classroom ambient light, whatever the light is in the room. Okay. Just to shoot a basic photograph of this. So I have my camera here and I already dialed all my settings in because I knew I was going to do this and wanted to do it a little quicker. My ISO is a little bit higher. I don't want to go too low in depth of field, but I do want to have the back look good out. So do use a lower aperture and then take a few photographs and then check your photos to make sure that they are in focus, that they look good. They have to be exposed correctly. If you want to use aperture priority mode, you could put it as low as you can on our school cameras. Please don't go over our 1600 ISO. If you need to add more light to your initial photograph, that's absolutely fine. Lots of ways to add light. One way is literally a flashlight. So you could hold a flashlight. You could even put the flashlight kind of on top when you photograph. You kind of set it kind of on top, almost like it's a flash on a camera. Whatever you need to do to get a little bit more light into the photograph itself. Okay, so once you take your initial photograph with the ambient light in the room, Next, you want to shoot a photograph that has some sort of light source. A flashlight might be okay. We do have some LED lights, and some of you might have these at home. And this one will do color, but also do white light. So if I click this on, it will give me a white light that I can use, and I will have this available as well. So let's just use my LED panel. And so you want to make shadows in some manner. So either up above, off to the side in some way to add a little bit of ambiance to your Staple City photograph. And you can turn up the brightness, turn it down, move the light around like, like a real city here. Okay. And again, if you don't have a light like this, basic flashlight is just totally fine. And you can bring it in close as long as it's outside the frame. You can even sit it down on the side there like that and then shoot your picture, and it gives you like that sunset vibe. Don't worry too much about the background because most of them you're going to change the background. Okay. Another thing about this is the next step you're going to want to do colored light. Now, this cube here does colored light. It does millions of different colors. So I'm turning it back on right now. And then I can just cycle through my colors and do all kinds of different colors here. So your next photograph that you're going to do is you're going to pick some sort of color and you're going to add it to your photograph because you're doing 4 to 5 final polished photos here. And something kind of like this, you can kind of see the back of my camera here. I already have my settings all locked in for this. And again, my students ask me all the time, what are your settings? What are your settings? And I want mine to look like yours. And I say, well, the settings depends on the light in the scene, the light that's hitting the sensor. So I can never really tell you exactly the light for something like this. Now you're like, but I don't have colored lights. Well, you could. And if you do this at home and use your cell phone, which we're not using in the classroom, you could always take your cell phone light. Imagine that your cell phone's here, and you could take a dry erase marker and you can actually paint over the light source itself. So I have purple and red here that you could use. Um, Dry erase markers in a school setting, green, blue, red. Red will make like a pinkish color. So you can do that as well. So once you have your photographs, we're going to go and we're going to edit them. So that's the next step. So here's the photograph of the staples with a tinfoil background. And I understand there's pros and cons to tinfoil versus seamless paper. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to crop. We're going to make sure everything's lined up. We're going to clean it up, and then we're going to color it. Now, first, if you want to crop your image, go into the crop mode. Pick a crop that'll work for you. 4:5 works pretty well for this because then I get rid of those weird edges. So I'm going to go ahead and crop this down. And then what I'm doing in this portion of the video is to add color to the building itself. There's lots of ways to select the buildings. One of them is object selection. And if you see the magenta, pinkish magenta, it's actually working pretty well. So you could click on one of these and you get this pink overlay. If you click on another one, it will change the overlay and will now select this. So the trick is to hold the shift key down, and now you can connect a few different buildings. So let's just say that we just select those buildings there. It did a pretty good job, so I'm not going to worry about the edges too much, but then I'm going to go over to my adjustments, and I'm going to go to Hue and Saturation. Hue and Saturation allows you to colorize and make some changes to what we have here. So if you start to play with this, you're going to start seeing some different coloring on your selection. Now here's the deal. If you click the colorize button right here, this is the trick, guys. It's one of the ways you can do this. Hit the colorize button, and then whatever's in your selection will start to get color to it. Okay, so I like that. Nice green. Now, I could go back here. Let me just open my layers so you can see them as well. So this is what we just did right there. We're going to go ahead and put another hue adjustment saturation layer on in a moment, but we're going to go back to our selection tool, and maybe we want to select a couple other buildings, like these two, maybe that guy in the back, and this guy up front. Okay, so once I do that, again, if you're in this tool, it's going to keep trying to reselect, so just go to the marquee or the move tool, go back over here to your adjustment panel, pick, again, hue and saturation, get that colorized on. The colorize, what it will do is it will colorize the entire thing in the same manner. Now, maybe you like the purple. I like the purple and the green. It looks pretty good. Do I want to do the rest? I don't have to for this step. So for the manipulated colors inside of Photoshop, this would be appropriate and complete. Now, if you say, well, maybe I don't want my whole building that color. Maybe I just want parts of it. Okay, well, you have a mask here. So if I'm in the green mask and maybe just the building down towards the bottom of it, I don't want that. I make sure that I'm on a black brush and I start to paint. I'm just painting a little bit. So now, if you see that, if you look at that, now I've kind of painted, and I used a low opacity, just as a little bit of green hints. Let's go up to the purple one. And maybe I want to change this. This is called blend modes, and you can change this, and it'll give you a different vibe. So as you scroll through these, you can see some of them like, whoa, that one's really vivid. Other ones, like this one was pretty good, that saturation right there. It like made a multicolor. That's pretty cool. I'm going to leave that because I like that. Okay, so maybe I like that. Maybe down here I want some other color. I don't know. I can go back over here, maybe take one of my selection tools. I could go back to that object selection tool and see. Now, if you're in the object selection tool, it's not picking stuff up. Just click on the background layer so it can actually find stuff. So let's say these two, hold the shift key down. I want to do something different there, okay? I am going to go up here with it selected. I'm going to go over to my adjustments again. I'm going to pick a hue and saturation, make sure it says colorize, and mess with it a little bit. But if you're going to do that, just make sure that you're on whatever layer you expect to be on. So I'm on this layer here. There's my main buildings that I already painted on, and there's my purplish colors over there. So back over to here again, double click if you want to adjust. I got colorize. Oh, see, it's making it brighter down at the bottom. Okay, okay, I like that little bit of blue pop. Maybe you're going to pretend you have water down here or something. Now again, you can change any layer with the blend mode here. So if you're like, I don't know, I want that. Maybe I want exclusion. And maybe I want to blend it together a little bit more. So it's only kind of on the bottom part of this. So I'm going to go up here. Maybe bring some of that back in. There we go. So this I would consider to be done for manipulated color. The next portion is Generative Fill, and this is an artificial intelligence tool in Photoshop that was added. So some of you may have seen this toolbar that kind of floats around. And this toolbar, so you know where it is under Windows, Contextual Taskbar. So if you don't have it on, click it there. It may give you a little box that says you have to agree using it, so please go ahead and do that. So this is going to be kind of fun. We're going to change our sky. When we're in here, we're going to select our city again. And then, let's invert it and go Generative Fill. And I'm going to type in new sky. See what it does. And see, it does say, yes, do you have to agree? So hit agree. It won't ask you every time. And so now it starts to think. You only get so many generative fills per month, so just be careful about that. Over here, we'll give you variations, and this is artificial intelligence, so you can get some funky stuff. So I don't really understand what's going on here, but that's pretty cool looking. It will make a mask right here that you can then go manipulate more if you want. You can change the colors, whatever. Or you can say generate again. I don't know. I'm looking. Let's try something like um, outer space galaxy. Outer space galaxy. See what it does. And depending on on how fast your computer is, depends on how long this takes. And I do believe you need to be online for generative fill. Okay, so we're getting this kind of on the edge of this planet. This is kind of funky and weird. Let's look at this one, and that's cooler. If you want, and you're looking down here, you're at your mask, okay? And you're getting this kind of weird edge down here. If you want to blur that some, just take a low flow, low opacity, a low hardness, and just go in with your white brush and just kind of soften a little bit. I don't know, maybe. And you could do this with it turned on or off so you can kind of see what you got going on down here. Maybe you want to bring back in some of the tin foil, make your edge a little blurrier like that. That's fine too. This is also a pretty cool image. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this one. I'm just making screenshots for PowerPoint for you. Both of those look good. This contextual taskbar here, you can, depending on what you're in, depends on what options there are. But there's a button here that says pin position. So instead of it floating around down here, you can pin it wherever you want. So if you're like, okay, I always want it to be, I don't know, kind of over this way somewhere. Maybe I want it right there. I'm just going to pin it there, whatever. I can reset the bar. I can hide the bar. Some of yours are probably hidden. So there's different options for that as well. So this is your generative fill. You can do more generative fill. You could say, okay, I want a spaceship. What kind of spaceship do I want? Maybe I'm going to put a spaceship in the sky right there. Let's try this and see what it does. I mean, have fun with it, guys. I just want you to have some fun with this. Oh, that's a fun spaceship. A little weird. Eh, that was okay. I think it's a little bright for me. You know, and you can go in and you can actually, if you accept this, it will give you a masked layer, and you can go and you change the colors. You can make it a little bit darker, whatever. I wonder if it will let me do something like the Enterprise. And that's from Star Trek. Yeah, I definitely misspelled Star Trek. What's it giving me? A couple funky things. I don't know if it will give me the Enterprise ship or not. We're gonna find out. Let's try one more. Okay, so it's not actually giving me. Sometimes if it's something that is licensable, it will not give you exactly that. But some of these are kind of cool. I kind of like that one. So I could do things to that layer, right? I could add a clipping mask to it. So if I just wanted the spaceship, I would have to actually go and make a selection. I think this is looking pretty good, and this is what I would do with this. That is generative fill. It's an artificial intelligence. You could do some different things about it. There are some regulations and restrictions. So you couldn't ask for it to create the likeness of a famous person. It won't do that. Some other things they will not also do as well. This portion of the video is how to replace the sky in Photoshop from my staple city. So we're going to go ahead and create our own sky first. So I'm going to Google. I'm going to search for Google Advanced Image Search right here. And I showed this to you before, but I'm going to type in sky. Down here, this is what's important right here, is I need to change image size to larger than 2 megapixels. If I do this, I'm going to get more robust and options for skies that will work. If you do not use the sky large enough, you will not succeed on this project as well as you could. So I'm looking at these different skies here. And if I would click on one, like this one here, over here tells you the size of the actual picture, 6,000 by 4,000. That's pretty good. That's a very large sky. If I click on this one, it's 3,200 by 1,800. That's not too bad. Maybe I want a sunset. It's a little smaller. 1,900 by 1,000. It is high resolution, but it could be better. I'm going to pop back to this one. I really like how it looks. I'm going to open this. And again, some things will be filtered in Skull, and I can't do anything about that, but I'm going to go free download, choose my size. Okay. got me a sky image here. And then I'm going to go over here to Photoshop. I'm going to go to File, Open. I'm going to go find that picture that I just had there. I'm going to open that photo. These are in two different places. So I'm going to select this image. I am going to go over here and go to Unlock It. And I'm going to click on Duplicate Layer. And it's going to say, where do you want it to be? Well, I want it to go over here to my picture of my sky, and I think it's right here. So it's this one here. I haven't saved it yet. That's why it doesn't have a name. And I'm going to go Duplicate Layer. I'm going to say I want it to go to the first one, 403. I'm going to hit OK. Yes, different depth of dye. That's fine. This will be fine. Hit OK. If you get that, you hit OK. So now, here's my sky, right here. And here's my staple city. You may wonder about this line here. This is a guideline. So if you see around the edge of Photoshop, you have a roller. If you don't, you can just go over here and turn it off and on right here. But there's a roller, and you could change it to metric, inches, whatever. But these guidelines, if you're in the Move tool and you drag one on, it helps you just kind of make kind of frames. So let's say my sky, I'm going to replace the sky from here up, okay? And I have this layer here. I turned it on. And I'm not going to use the bottom of this, but right now I don't need to worry about that. I am going to select my subject. Okay, make sure you're on the layer. I'm going to try first select subject and see if it works. It may not work. Well, that did a pretty good job. But if you look in here, there's some spots where it needs to be cleaned up. I'm not too worried about below my guideline, but above it I really am worried about it because I don't want to come through. So how do I clean up a selection? Well, you guys know there's multiple ways to do this from when we worked on some earlier assignments, but if you go to the marquee tool, for example, because these are straight lines, and you hold down the Option button on your keyboard, you can see there's this little subtraction that showed up. And because these are straight lines, I could subtract using this tool, okay? I just keep holding the Option button down. I could also use my polygonal lasso tool right here. Because I do have all of these straight lines, it might be really easy for you. Oops. Hold down the Shift key to add to the selection and use the Alt Option button to subtract from it. So I'm going to subtract here. Some of you, this is going to be the tool that you will be comfortable with using. So then I'm going to wrap it back over to the other edge. There it is. Okay. Where else? Down here, down all the way down this area. So this is the polygonal lasso is a pretty good tool for including and excluding stuff from a selection that's all straight lines. Now right here we have a little bit of overlap, so we're going to use the Shift key. I'm going to try to go here and add to my selection. And you can zoom in, guys. Please zoom in. Okay, zoom in, zoom out. Okay, so here's my selection. Those are pretty good. So I'm actually going to duplicate the layer here and just understand what I'm doing for a second. I'm making a copy of only my selection. So if I make select and I click duplicate layer, the shortcut to make a copy of just the stuff that is selected is Command J. And Command J is on your midterm, so you do need to know that. Now if I turn off the background layer, you can see what I've selected. So then I'm going to turn on my sky. Okay, so the sky's big and it goes over the top, and we can make it even a little bit bigger if we want with the transform tool, if we're on that layer, whatever you want. One thing that I kind of like about this picture, I'm thinking, is I got a couple like hillsides and stuff in the background, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to actually move this up a little bit because I see my guidelines right here, right? And then I'm just going to then go to my selection. And there's my selection again. I am going to hold the Command key, click my selection. I'm going to go up here to my sky. I'm going to press the mask button on the sky layer. You're like, oh, but it's backwards. Okay, that's easy. Right now you're on a black mask. If you want to make the mask white, you make sure you have it selected and you press Command I for invert. And now we have this really cool looking sky that's on top of my picture. Now, what could I do with it? Well, this is as far as you really need to go. If you want to go back to your layers, and you want to take that bottom edge and just kind of blur it a little bit or smudge it, you could. You could do some different things if you want to do that. So it's totally up to you how you do it, but that would be replacing the sky. And in this video, I'm going to take a staple city where I have already replaced the background, and I'm going to actually create a water reflection at the bottom. This is a nice advanced step to staple city that can be used in the classroom. I have already put everything together and I applied everything to a single layer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out. I need room for the reflection below. So with that said, I'm going to go to image canvas size. I'm going to look and see what my height already is in this case. If yours is horizontal, it might be a little bit different, but my height here. So I want to anchor, so click up here, anchor it so this will stay to the top. It's going to add space down here. And I'm just going to go ahead and double the height for a moment. If your numbers here are really, really low, I would be worried about resolution, just saying. So now it's going to double it. I'm not going to keep it doubled forever. You're going to see. We'll get rid of that later. First thing that we need to do is have a nice strong background, and then we have the staple city. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a selection with the marquee tool, M for the marquee tool, of my city. Go just a little bit higher than the edge here, and I'm going to make a copy of that. So I'm going to make sure that I'm on the correct layer, make sure it's unlocked, and to duplicate it, shortcut is Command J, Control J if you're on Windows. And so now if you take your move tool, you're going to see there is a new layer right here that has the actual same exact replica of that layer. So we're going to hit Command T for the transform tool if you're on Windows, Control T. And we're going to scroll down here to the bottom here, a little bit hard to see right here, but it says flip vertical. And then press enter, done. You can hit the check mark in the option menu. You're like, okay, that looks pretty good. But if it were a reflection and it were in like water or something, we have something to do to it. Now, there's lots of different ways to do this next step. I'm just going to show you one that's a little bit more advanced without getting into smart objects or anything. Go up here to filter. And you have some, inside of filter, you have different options here, including a filter gallery that is not on right now because of the bit rate. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick here blur. Okay, and there's other options here. And you can play with these. Scroll through, check out what they are. I'm going to go to blur. I'm going to go to motion blur. And you're going to see how simple this is. Okay, here's motion blur. It already kind of did it, didn't it? Now, you could change the angle. You know, I think, frankly, kind of doing it at around 0 will be okay. If you want to try a different angle, go ahead. But I'm just going to leave it at 0. And, you know, you can play with pixels. You know, it could be higher or lower. I'm just blurring it a little bit here. Like, I don't want it way up here where I can't even tell what it is. We'll do something with that later. So something along those lines might be good. Hit OK. If you zoom in here and you can see that edge is very crisp, you can go, you know, you could throw a mask on there. You could take your black brush. You could turn it down low. You could put 80% opacity, 50% flow, hardness up a little. And you could go in and paint that edge some if you wanted to. So the easiest way to paint that edge, guys, if you're going to do it, is go on one end and then hold down the shift key, click on the other edge. It blurs the whole thing for you. Now, I can kind of see through it a little bit here, so just be careful how you do this. As you can see, it blurred that edge a little bit, so I smoothed up just a tiny bit. If anything looks weird, you can go in and you can literally use your mask tool. See, that's the mask I just made. You can go in here and use your mask tool and do anything else you want with this. But once you like that, hit Command 0 to get fit on screen. So the whole picture fits right in your screen, which is really helpful. So then I'm going to take my crop tool, C for the crop tool, and I'm going to determine how I want to crop this. I already know that I want to crop this 4 or 5. Okay, so I can crop this up here. You know, I can go in here. It's okay. And please keep your crop ratios. Don't just willy-nilly and pick whatever random crop size you want. Okay, so I kind of like that. I don't mind this being off the bottom here. I am going to hit done if I have my contextual toolbar open, check mark, or I can hit return or enter on the keyboard. Once I do that, F for full screen. And that's the final photo, guys. Export that photo, submit it, and you're ready to go.